And that's when I realized the woman standing at the altar, waiting for me, was the same woman who'd handed me coffee on the worst morning of my life. But I'm getting ahead of myself. Let me take you back to the night that destroyed everything I'd built and accidentally gave me everything I never knew I needed. See, the notification lit up Daniel Okonkwo's phone at 11:47 p.m. on a Tuesday, a night that would divide his life into before and after. His 6-year-old daughter Mia had just fallen asleep after her third request for water, and he was finally collapsing onto his worn couch in their small Brooklyn apartment, the exhaustion of single parenthood settling into his bones like an old friend. The message was from Vivian Hartley, his CEO, the woman who ran Hartley Financial Solutions with an iron fist wrapped in Chanel, the woman who had rejected his promotion 3 times in 4 years, the woman who had smiled at him just that morning and said, maybe next quarter, Daniel, you're just not quite there yet. He almost ignored it. Almost. But then he saw the preview, an image attachment with a caption that made his blood run cold. See what you could have had. His thumb hovered over the notification for 3 full seconds. Something in his gut screamed at him to delete it without looking, to pretend this moment never happened, to protect himself from whatever chaos was about to unfold. He opened it anyway, and there was Vivian Hartley, his married CEO, mother of 2, keynote speaker at last month's Women in Business conference, in a hotel room that definitely wasn't her Connecticut estate. The sheets were tangled. Her blonde hair was disheveled in a way he'd never seen at the office. And the man beside her, the one whose face was partially visible in the mirror behind them. Daniel's heart stopped. It was Richard Castellano, the CEO of Castellano Ventures, their biggest client. The man whose account Daniel had spent 2 years cultivating. The man who had specifically requested Daniel handle all their portfolio management because, as Richard had said, he's the only honest person in your whole damn company. The photo wasn't meant for him. The caption wasn't meant for him. This was clearly intended for someone else, perhaps a jealous rival, perhaps Richard's wife, perhaps some twisted power play between people who had more money than morality. But fate, in its infinite dark humor, had delivered it straight to Daniel's phone. And that's when the second message came through. WE Delit IMIDILWDO Nadaraspadeirs. Daniel stared at the screen. His mind raced through every interaction he'd had with Vivian over the past 4 years. Every rejected promotion. Every stolen idea. Every time she'd taken credit for his work in board meetings. Every late night he'd missed tucking Mia into bed because Vivian needed just one more revision on presentations she would later claim as her own. And now this. This explained why the Castellano account had mysteriously been transferred to her direct oversight 6 months ago. Why Richard had stopped returning Daniel's calls. Why the Christmas bonus he'd been promised had been restructured into nothing. His fingers moved before his brain could stop them. This explains everything. Bus. 4 words. Send. The read receipt appeared instantly, then the typing indicator, then nothing. For 17 agonizing minutes, nothing. Daniel should have been terrified. He should have been calculating exit strategies, consulting lawyers, preparing for war. Instead, he felt something he hadn't experienced in years, a strange, settling calm. The calm of a man who had finally been handed a missing puzzle piece. The calm of someone who understood, at last, why his life had been systematically sabotaged. He walked to Mia's room and watched her sleep, her small chest rising and falling, her favorite stuffed elephant tucked under her chin. She looked so much like her mother, the mother who had walked out 3 years ago, claiming that parenthood was suffocating her potential. I'm going to fix this, he whispered to his sleeping daughter. I don't know how yet, but I promise you, baby girl, I'm going to fix everything. He didn't know that 20 feet above him, in the apartment upstairs, a woman named Sophie Brennan was also awake at midnight, also staring at her phone, also about to have her life completely upended by a corporate scandal that was only just beginning. But that part of the story comes later. Much later. 2. If this story is already making your heart race, hit that like button, and let me know in the comments, Have you ever received a message that wasn't meant for you? What did you do? Subscribe if you're ready for the twist that's coming next, because trust me, you're not prepared for what Vivian did the following morning. Daniel arrived at work at 8:15 a.m., exactly as he did every morning after dropping Maya at her grandmother's apartment. His mother, Grace, had been his rock since the divorce, a 63-year-old Nigerian immigrant who had raised 3 children alone and had exactly zero patience for women who abandon their babies. "You look tired, Dani," she'd said that morning, using the nickname only she was allowed to use. "Something happening at that job?" "Nothing I can't handle, Mama." She'd given him the look, the one that said she knew he was lying but loved him enough to let him lie. "You bring that grandbaby back to me by 6, and you eat something today. You're getting too skinny." Now, walking through the gleaming lobby of Hartley Financial Solutions, Daniel felt every eye on him. Or was he imagining it? The security guard's smile seemed forced. The receptionist avoided his gaze. The elevator felt smaller somehow, more suffocating. When the doors opened on the executive floor, Vivian's assistant was waiting. "Mr. Okonkwo, Ms. Hartley needs to see you immediately." "No, good morning. No small talk about Mia or the weather or the Knicks game last night. Just cold, clinical efficiency." Daniel straightened his tie, the blue one Maya had picked out for Father's Day, because it matched her favorite dress, and walked toward the corner office that had loomed over his career for 4 long years. Vivian was standing at the window when he entered, her back to him, the Manhattan skyline sprawling behind her like a kingdom she believed she owned. Her blonde hair was perfect today, swept up in an elegant twist. Her cream blazer probably cost more than his monthly rent. "Close the door." He did. She didn't turn around for a long moment. When she finally did, her face was a mask of composed fury, the kind that came from a lifetime of getting everything she wanted and being utterly unprepared for resistance. "I assume you know why you're here." "I have a guess. That message was private, sent in error, and your response was completely inappropriate." Daniel felt something shift inside him. For 4 years, he had swallowed every insult, accepted every slight, absorbed every microaggression, because he had a daughter to feed, and a life to maintain, and a career that he believed would eventually reward his patience. "That man died last night. My response was 4 words," he said calmly. "Yours was a photograph that violates roughly 17 HR policies and at least 3 sections of your own employee conduct handbook." Vivian's eye twitched. Just slightly. But he caught it. "Are you threatening me, Daniel?" "I'm making an observation. There's a difference." She walked toward her desk slowly, deliberately, like a predator circling wounded prey. But Daniel wasn't wounded. For the first time in years, he felt fully awake. "Let me be very clear about something," she said, settling into her leather chair. "That image was sent from my personal phone, during personal hours, regarding a personal matter. It has nothing to do with this company. Richard Castellano is this company's largest client. A client whose account was removed from my management 6 months ago, without explanation. A client whose annual renewal is directly tied to the bonus structure that you unilaterally dissolved in December. So respectfully, Vivian, it has everything to do with this company." The mask cracked. Just for a second, genuine fear flashed in her gray eyes before she wrestled it back under control. "You've always been too smart for your own good, Daniel. It's why I could never promote you. Smart men are dangerous. They ask questions. They see patterns. They don't just accept what they're told." "Is that a compliment or a confession?" She smiled, a cold, calculated thing that had probably destroyed better men than him. "It's your termination. Effective immediately. Security will escort you out. You'll receive 2 weeks severance, which is generous given the circumstances. Your personal effects will be mailed." Daniel had expected this. He'd prepared for this. But the reality still hit like a physical blow. The sudden severing of everything he'd worked toward for 4 years. The income that paid for Maya's school. The health insurance that covered her asthma medication. The stability he had promised his mother would never waver. On what grounds? Insubordination. Creating a hostile work environment. Take your pick. None of those are accurate. They don't need to be accurate, Daniel. They just need to be documented. And trust me, by the end of today, they will be documented extensively. Your entire performance history is about to be reviewed and revised. Every late project, every client complaint, every minor infraction will suddenly become very, very major. She stood, smoothing her blazer, signaling that this conversation was over. You should have deleted that photo. You should have pretended it never happened. You should have known your place. Daniel walked to the door, then paused, his hand on the handle. He turned back to face her one final time. Vivian, you want to know what I actually could have had? She raised an eyebrow, already bored with him. I could have had your career, your position, your power. All of it. You saw that from day one, didn't you? That's why you blocked every promotion. That's why you stole my work. That's why you transferred the Castellano account the moment Richard started asking to work with me, directly. Her face went pale. You weren't protecting the company from me. You were protecting yourself from me, and you just made the biggest mistake of your life by putting that in writing. He held up his phone, the one that still contained her photo, her caption, her desperation. See what you could have had, Vivian. See what you just lost. He walked out before she could respond. The next 6 weeks were the hardest of Daniel's life. He filed for unemployment. He sent out 147 job applications. He borrowed money from his mother, which hurt his pride more than any termination ever could. He explained to Mia why Daddy was home during the day now, turning it into a game. Daddy's on an adventure! Looking for an even better job, while crying silently in the bathroom after she fell asleep. He consulted with an employment lawyer, a sharp-eyed woman named Priya who reviewed the text messages and practically rubbed her hands together with glee. Wrongful termination, retaliation, potential sexual harassment implications, destruction of evidence if they try to delete those messages from her end. Daniel, this is a slam dunk. We're looking at 6 figures, minimum. But money wouldn't come for months. And Mia needed medicine now. Needed stability now. He was 3 days from giving up, from calling his cousin in Atlanta who'd offered him a warehouse job, when his phone rang with an unknown number. Mr. Okonkwo. This is Patricia Chen, Chief Talent Officer at Castellano Ventures. Richard would like to meet with you. Personally. Tomorrow morning, if you're available. Daniel nearly dropped the phone. I'm available. Castellano Ventures occupied the top 12 floors of a building that made Hartley Financial look like a strip mall. The lobby was all glass and marble, and the kind of understated wealth that whispered rather than shouted. Daniel had dressed in his best suit, the charcoal gray one he'd bought for his mother's 70th birthday celebration, and had practiced his handshake 17 times in the bathroom mirror. You've got this, Daddy, Mia had said that morning, giving him a good luck kiss on the cheek. You're the smartest daddy in the whole world. He was holding on to those words as he stepped into Richard Castellano's office. The man himself was nothing like Daniel expected. Richard was in his early 50s, with silver temples and kind eyes, and the rumpled look of someone who had more money than he knew what to do with, and had stopped caring about impressing anyone decades ago. Sit down, Daniel. Please. Daniel sat. I'm going to cut straight to it because I respect your time and I know you've been through hell. 6 months ago, Vivian came to me with a proposal. She wanted to restructure our account, move it away from the junior associates and into executive oversight, her words, not mine. She was very persuasive. Daniel said nothing. He didn't need to. What she didn't know is that my business decisions have never been influenced by my personal life, not once in 30 years. What happened between us was a mistake I'm not proud of, and it ended the moment I realized she was using it as leverage. But by then, I'd already agreed to the restructuring, and our contract made it difficult to reverse. Why are you telling me this? Richard leaned forward. Because I know what she did to you. Because I've spent the last 6 weeks watching her systematically destroy your professional reputation, calling our mutual contacts, spreading rumors, making sure no one in this city would touch you. And I'm here to undo that damage. He slid a folder across the desk. Senior portfolio manager, six-figure salary, full benefits starting day one, equity stake after year one, and a client list that includes 3 accounts I've personally recruited because I trust your judgment. Daniel opened the folder. The numbers swam before his eyes. Why me? You barely know me. I know enough. I know you spent 2 years managing our account flawlessly. I know you never once tried to leverage that relationship for personal gain. I know you had access to information that could have destroyed Vivian and me, and instead of going to the press, you went to a lawyer. That tells me everything I need to know about your character. Daniel looked at the offer letter, then back at Richard, then at the skyline beyond the window. A different skyline now, a new perspective, a different future. I have one condition. Richard raised an eyebrow. Name it. I want to be involved in any decisions regarding Hartley Financial. Not because I want revenge, I've got lawyers handling that. But because that company is going to implode, and there are good people there who deserve a soft landing when it does. Richard smiled, a real smile, warm and genuine. That's exactly what I hoped you'd say. Welcome to Castellano Ventures, Daniel. They shook hands. And somewhere across the city, Vivian Hartley was answering a phone call from her board of directors that would change everything. Q. Now here's where I need you to pay attention. Because what happens next is the part of this story that still makes me emotional every single time I tell it. If you're still here, you're clearly invested, so drop a comment telling me what you think is going to happen. And if you haven't subscribed yet, now's the time, because we're just getting to the good part. 2. Her name was Sophie Brennan, and she handed Daniel his first cup of coffee at Castellano Ventures on a Wednesday morning that was gray and drizzling, and entirely unremarkable, except for the fact that it was the beginning of everything. You look lost, she said, appearing beside his desk with a warm smile and a paper cup that smelled like salvation. First day, right? I remember mine. I wandered into the wrong meeting and somehow ended up pitching a marketing strategy to the CFO. He loved it. Got promoted within 6 months. Daniel laughed, an actual laugh, the first genuine one in weeks. I was just trying to find the printer. Down the hall, 3rd door on the left, but the good one, the one that doesn't jam, is on the 4th floor. I'll show you later. I'm Sophie, by the way. Account analytics. Daniel. Portfolio management. I know. She grinned. You're kind of famous around here. The guy Richard personally recruited after the whole Hartley thing. People are curious. Great. Love being a spectacle. Don't worry. Give it a week and someone else will do something embarrassing and you'll be old news. That's the beauty of a company this size. She started to walk away, then paused, turning back. Her red hair caught the fluorescent light in a way that made it look almost like fire. Hey, Daniel. For what it's worth, I've heard the story. Most of it, anyway. And I think you did the right thing. Takes guts to stand up to power when you've got everything to lose. She disappeared around the corner before he could respond. He didn't see her again for 3 days. Sophie Brennan was not what Daniel had expected. He'd expected someone who belonged in this world of glass towers and power lunches and casual mentions of weekend houses in the Hamptons. She didn't. She'd grown up in a trailer park in Kentucky, worked 3 jobs through community college, and had clawed her way into corporate America through sheer stubborn brilliance. My mom always said I was too ambitious for my own good. She told him one evening, 3 weeks later, when they'd both stayed late to finish a project and had ended up ordering Thai food and eating it on his office floor because the conference rooms were all booked. Too ambitious. In her world, yes. She wanted me to marry a local boy, have some babies, work at the grocery store like she did. Safe. Predictable. Small. Why didn't you? Sophie looked at him, really looked at him, and something in her green eyes made his heart stutter in a way it hadn't in years. Because I wanted to prove that where you start doesn't have to be where you end. That you can rewrite your story. She paused. But you already know something about that, don't you? Daniel set down his chopsticks. My ex-wife used to say I was too idealistic. That I believed in fairness too much for a world that didn't care about fairness. Is that why she left? One of the reasons. The bigger one was that she didn't want to be a mother anymore. Maya was 3. One day my wife was there, the next day she was gone. Left a note saying she needed to find herself, and that I was equipped to handle things alone. Sophie's face softened. That must have been devastating. It was, for a long time, but then it wasn't, because I realized that Maya and we're a team. We don't need anyone else to complete us. We're already complete. But that doesn't mean you have to be alone forever. The words hung between them, heavy with implication. Daniel's throat went dry. I should get home. My mom's been watching Mia all day, and she gets worried if I'm late. Sophie nodded, but there was something in her expression, disappointment. Understanding? Hope, that stayed with him the entire cab ride home. The next few months were a strange dance of proximity and restraint. Daniel and Sophie worked together on increasingly complex projects. They discovered shared loves, bad reality television, obscure documentary podcasts, Ethiopian food, and the particular joy of heckling subway performers who were genuinely terrible. She met Maya on accident. When Daniel's mother got sick, and he had to bring his daughter to the office for an afternoon, Sophie won Mia over in approximately 17 seconds by producing an emergency stash of colored pencils and paper from her desk drawer. You're very good at dragons, Sophie told Mia solemnly, examining the crayon drawing with the same intensity she brought to quarterly reports. That's not a dragon. That's my daddy. Sophie looked at Daniel, then back at the purple creature with 17 legs and apparent flames coming from its ears. I see the resemblance. Daniel threw a balled up piece of paper at her. Mia giggled, and something shifted in the universe, something small but seismic. The lawsuit settled in March. Priya called him on a Saturday morning while he was making pancakes for Mia, Mickey Mouse shaped, with chocolate chip eyes. 320,000. They're terrified it'll go public. Vivian's already been terminated by the board, and Hartley Financial is in the middle of a hostile takeover. Your old colleagues are all scrambling for new positions. Daniel sat down heavily on a kitchen stool. That's more than enough to pay for Maya's college fund, clear your debts, and take a very nice vacation. Congratulations, Daniel, you won. But winning felt strange, hollow, like crossing a finish line he'd been racing toward for so long that he'd forgotten what came after. Daddy, the pancakes are smoking. Daniel jumped up, rescued the Mickey Mouse from incineration, and served his daughter breakfast like any other Saturday morning. But inside, he was already planning what to do next. He asked Sophie out on a Tuesday, in the office kitchen, while she was microwaving leftover lasagna. This is possibly the least romantic setting imaginable, she said, gesturing at the humming refrigerator and the coworker passive, aggressive notes about labeled food. I know. But I've been trying to find the perfect moment for 3 months, and I finally realized there isn't one. There's just this. You meet terrible fluorescent lighting, and the fact that I think about you approximately 7 times a day, and it's starting to affect my work performance. Sophie laughed. 87. That's very specific. I counted. Of course you did. She stepped closer. The microwave beeped behind her, ignored. Daniel Okonkwo, are you asking me on a date? I am. A real one. With dinner and conversation and absolutely no discussion of quarterly projections. What about second, quarter forecasts? Banned. Year, and summaries. Punishable by dessert withdrawal. She grinned. In that case I accept. But I have one condition. Name it. Mia has to approve. If your daughter doesn't like me, we don't move forward. Deal. Something warm and enormous swelled in Daniel's chest. Deal. Maya's verdict came after a Saturday afternoon at the Central Park Zoo, where Sophie demonstrated an encyclopedic knowledge of penguin species and an ability to make animal noises that had Mia in hysterical giggles. Daddy Mia whispered loudly on the cab ride home, clearly intending for Sophie to hear. Can Sophie come to dinner again? She's funny and she knows about penguins, and she looks at you like you're her favorite pancake. Daniel glanced at Sophie, who was doing a terrible job of hiding her smile. What does that mean, baby? Looking at someone like they're a pancake. You know, Mia said with 6-year-old wisdom. Like they're the best thing you've ever seen, and you want to eat them up, but in a nice way. The way Grandma looks at her Sunday bacon. Sophie burst out laughing. Daniel dropped his head into his hands. And somewhere between the zoo and their apartment, they became something more than co-workers, more than friends. They became a family in training. The proposal happened 11 months later on a beach in Cape Cod, during a sunset that looked like someone had spilled orange and pink paint across the sky. Mia was there too, dressed in her favorite purple dress, holding the ring box with the gravity of a nuclear launch code. Daddy practiced this like 100 times. She informed Sophie. He's really nervous. You should probably say yes so he doesn't puke, Ma. Sophie laughed through her tears. Well, now I have to say yes. I can't be responsible for your father's gastric distress. Is that a yes? Daniel asked, still on one knee, sand sticking to his pants, waves rolling behind him, the whole ridiculous romantic cliché of it making his heart pound. Sophie pulled him up, kissed him, then whispered against his lips, that's a yes. 1,000 times yes. For every morning and every evening, and every terrible microwave dinner in office kitchens for the rest of our lives. Mia cheered. The strangers on the beach applauded, and Daniel held on to the two people who had somehow become his entire world. They got married the following June, in a small ceremony in his mother's backyard in Queens. Grace cried the entire time but insisted she wasn't crying, she just had something in both eyes. Mia was the flower girl, taking her responsibilities so seriously that she individually placed each petal rather than throwing them, turning the 5-minute walk down the aisle into approximately 15 minutes of adorable chaos. Sophie wore a simple white dress that she'd bought at a sample sale, because she said spending a fortune on something she'd wear once was peak capitalism nonsense. And Daniel looked at this woman who had handed him coffee on his worst day and thought, this is what could have been. This is what is. And it's better than anything I ever imagined. Here's the thing about hitting rock bottom. Sometimes it's just the universe preparing you for something better. 2 years after their wedding, Daniel was promoted to partner at Castellano Ventures. Sophie launched her own analytics consulting firm with Mia as her unofficial Chief Inspiration Officer. Grace moved into an apartment closer to them, finally accepting help after 40 years of stubborn independence. And Vivian Hartley, the last anyone heard, she was running a small insurance agency in a strip mall outside of Newark. Not because there's anything wrong with that, but because her whole identity had been built on power, on prestige, on being the one who held other people's careers in her hands. She never learned that true success isn't about what you take from others. It's about what you build together. Daniel learned that lesson twice, once when everything fell apart, and again when Sophie and Mia taught him how to build something stronger from the pieces. If this story moved you, if it made you think about the detours that led you somewhere unexpected, I want to hear about it. Drop a comment below and tell me, where are you watching from? What country? I love knowing that these stories reach people all around the world. And remember, the message you receive by accident might just be the message you were supposed to get all along. Sometimes the worst moment of your life is just the doorway to the best one. Hit subscribe if you want more stories like this. Give this video a like if you believe that karma is real and that good people eventually find their way to good things. And until next time, keep going. Keep building. Keep loving with everything you have. Because the best part of your story might still be waiting to be written.